Today we have a short video on special right triangles, and in this video we're going to take ratios that you probably already know but adapt them a little bit for trig. So the first thing I'd like you to do is do the warm-up, and if you need to use a calculator you can, and if you could do it without a calculator even better, but if you need a calculator's backup I will accept decimals here as well. And go ahead and put your answers in for the warm-up, into the Edpuzzle, and then we'll move ourselves on. So for special right triangles, you may or may not remember from geometry that there's two types of special right triangles. There's a 30, 60, 90 and a 45, 45, 90. The first thing I want to do is identify the radian values of these. 30 degrees is equivalent to pi over 6. 60 degrees is equivalent to pi over 3. And then 90 degrees is equivalent to pi over 2. For our 45, 45, 90, that would be a pi over 4, pi over 4, pi over 2 type triangle. We are going to, at some point, become more comfortable with radians than we are with degrees. And so we want to always kind of keep that in mind what the radian value of that is. Now, you learned in your geometry classes that there is a special ratio of the sides for these. And you may have seen it as 1 root 3, 2, or you may have seen it as x, root 3x, and 2x, something like that. And the ratio for the 45, 45, 90 is a 1, 1, root 2 ratio. What we do in trig is we actually don't use that ratio. We adapt it. What we want in trig is we want the hypotenuse to be a 1. So if I take this ratio and I divide everything by 2, the ratio now becomes 1/2, root 3 halves, and 1. And we'll talk more about this in a future class. If I do that same thing for the 45, 45, 90 triangle, if I divide this entire ratio by a root 2, I get 1 over root 2, but I'm going to go ahead and rationalize that so it looks like root 2 over 2. Root 2 over 2, and then of course my hypotenuse is 1. The reason we like this ratio is because these have a hypotenuse of 1. So keep in mind, if I were drawing a triangle, wherever that triangle is, and I had a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the side across from 30 is 1/2, the side across from 60 is root 3 halves, and the side across from 90 is 1. So our goal in trig is to have that hypotenuse of 1. And that doesn't mean that we only ever have a hypotenuse of 1. It just means that sometimes we have a hypotenuse of 1, or that can be a little more valuable to us. If this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle that you see on the unit circle, then we would call the sides root 2 halves, and 1. So again, the reason we want that hypotenuse to be 1 is because it relates to this thing called the unit circle. And you guys are actually going to build a unit circle today. So we'll be doing that shortly. Before we do that, let's just go through a couple of these solving problems to make sure we know how to do it. So in example 1, I recognize that this is a 60, 90, so this must be a 30, 60, 90. Therefore, I know the side ratio. You can use the trig ratios here or the geometry ones. I don't really care for the purpose of these problems, but when we go to the unit circle, we will specifically use the trig ones only, and I'll explain why. So I'm going to use the geometric ratios here. So across from 30 is a 1, or I'm going to call it a 1x. Across from 60 is a root 3, or I'm going to call it an x root 3. And across from 90 is a 2, or a 2x. So this x is some multiplier that multiplies my 1 root 3 2 ratio to fit this triangle. Since this side 9 was not a 1, a root 3, or a 2, that means the original ratio has been expanded to get us to this specific triangle. So I need to first figure out what that x is, and I do that by setting the 9 equal to the x root 3, and I go through and I solve for x. And I think we get x then to be 3 root 3. If you divide 9 by root 3, you should get out a 3 root 3. Think about reverse multiplying this back. So that means that's my multiplier. So the whole ratio got multiplied by a 3 root 3. So this side, the x just is a 3 root 3. And then on this side, the x gets doubled. So 2 times 3 root 3 becomes a 6 root 3. And that's how we find our other sides. Now notice if it's a 45, 45, 90 like in B, then you have a different ratio. And in a 45, 45, 90, you always have two sides the same. So if this side is 8, then that is. You have the same situation going on in part D. So B and D use the 45, 45, 90, but in part C, I want you to try the 30, 60, 90 again. Go ahead and put your answers into the Edpuzzle, and then we'll take a look at our last thing for today. So on the back page of these notes is all the information you need to use to make a unit circle. And normally we would do this in class. So I would have all these materials for you, and you might not have all these, so do the best you can here. What you're going to do is you're going to get a sheet of graph paper, and if you have to do it on plain paper, that's fine. Get out a ruler, and if you don't have a ruler, some type of straight edge. If you have a compass and a protractor, that would be ideal. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to make this perfectly, but we'll just have to kind of eyeball it this year. That's fine. And then you want colors. What you're going to do is follow these steps, step 2 through 10. And step 2, it says, first, draw an XY axis centered as best you can. In step 3, you're going to draw the largest circle possible. So if you don't have a compass, try to find something that you can trace to get it a perfect circle. In step 4, you want to use your protractor to actually mark out where you have 30 degrees, 45, and 60 degrees on this. And you're going to mark those in every quadrant. So when I go over here, this will be 30 up from the line, from the x-axis, and this will be 45 up, but you're not going to label those as 30, 45. You're going to continue around counterclockwise from where we started. So they have you in step 5, use the protractor, mark all those angles, and then you draw these radii through all the markings. But then in step 6, you label all the angles, 30, 45, 60, then you'll get 90. This is another 30 pass, so it'll be 120, 135, 160, and then 150. I know how to add usually, I promise. And then we get to 180. You're going to continue. So looking at the next 30, 45, 60 from coming off 180, what would those be? So you're going to label all the angles in degrees. You are then going to label all the angles in radians as well. If you don't have a protractor, just eyeball it. Remember, 45 is perfectly in the middle, and 30 and 60 should be symmetrical on both sides. So do your best here if you don't have all the right tools. Then you carefully connect the points on the circle to make 3 vertical lines on each side. What we mean in step 7 is you are going to connect this green that points to 30 down to this other green. And you're going to make a triangle. Same thing with this next orange line. So this orange line that goes up and this orange line that goes down, where they hit the circle, you're going to connect a vertical line to make a triangle. What you're doing is you're making right triangles in your circle, and each of those right triangles are special right triangles. Let me just show you one of them right now. So one of the right triangles is right here. Because this is at a 60-degree angle, that means this is a 60-degree angle. So you have created a 30, 60, 90. Well, the whole point of a unit circle is that you are calling the radius 1, even though, of course, you made it much larger than 1 square. So we're calling the radius 1, which in this case is the hypotenuse. So we can use our trig ratios from the previous page to get the sides of 1/2 and the sides of root 3/2. And that'll help us identify, with our skills from yesterday's notes, each of these XY points. So the XY point is at 1/2 and root 3/2. So that's how you go to step 8. So from step 7, make the triangles. And then in step 8, you label all the XY points. And they're going to be the values from the 30, 60, 90 triangles or from the 45, 45, 90 triangles. That's actually step 9. Step 8 is talking about the quadrantal angles. So like here at 0 degrees, this is the point 1, 0, and at 90 degrees, you have 0, 1, etc. And then in step 10, you want to complete it. So there's kind of a checklist at the end about make sure you have all of these things. Really pay attention to the signs of your points. And then what I want you guys to do is Google a unit circle. So try doing this on your own first, and then Google a unit circle, and you'll be able to see what all of these should be. This is something that's very easy to find the answers to, and we'll go over it in class tomorrow. But you can Google it as well to make sure you're on the right track. Good luck. Have fun.